I've been reading online that some people think I talk too much about Christopher Ward. Well, I probably do. It's not because I'm a fanboy, it's not because I'm paid, it's because they're doing a lot of things really well and they're in a space and a price point that I find fascinating. And I do think they in some ways are taking over a bit of the hype space that a brand like Tudor has held on to for the last 5-10 years. In 2023, they turned a significant profit for the first time in a long time. And it got me thinking, are they going to be around in 5 years' time? Are they gunning for Tudor's spot in the market? Can their way of doing things turn a consistent profit? Why are they so popular? Let's dive in. Let's start with their journey. I think so far there have been 3 distinct phases. Phase 1 was from 2004, where Christopher Ward was established as an online-only watchmaker, and it went all the way up until 2014. All the way up to 2014, 2015, I more or less knew they existed, but I didn't pay attention to them. I've got no clue as to how they were doing as a business at that time, other than the fact that they did get some startup recognition for growth and innovation. But horologically speaking, they were not on a lot of people's radars. For me, I felt they had some reasonably forgettable dress watches and a lot of watches that were just, at least to me, a bit homage or replica-esque. And they didn't have a cohesive Christopher Ward design language. It's hard in hindsight to evaluate a watch from 10 or 15 years ago, but the Malvern was a little bit Daniel Wellington, and there were some odd rectangular dress watches and some very Breitling chunky chronos. Things started to change with phase 2 around 2015-ish, which was about the time that they ditched the word logo and went for the Swiss watch brand logo instead. This was also more or less around the time where they released their first attempt at an in-house movement with the NH21. 2015 was also the year where Adrian Buchman joined, who is not the only person, but one of the people behind the 12. And for those that don't know, he also had a role in elements related to the Czapek Antarctique. And just to keep things going, Jörg Bader, a real Swiss watch industry insider, supply chain guru and designer, also joined Christopher Ward more actively in 2014. In short, this confluence of a whole lot of talent decisions and product decisions were likely the true starting point for the trajectory CW is on today. Had all of those things not happened, CW might just have been another reasonably okay, slightly homage-esque brand, but that's not the case anymore. This, I think, was the turning point where they really laid the foundation for future success. All the way up to 2022, the catalog started to change. This was where the Trident, as we know it, was released. A lot of those core, basic, generally likable divers, field watches, and GMT type watches made their way into the catalog in this period. The design language also started to become more consistent. The quality of the watches improved in all aspects, and they started getting noticed. Now, based on their annual reports, 2019, 2020, 21, 22 were all loss-generating years. And part of this is partially down to investing heavily in the future. So basically spending money to make money. But there are other things at play that I'll get back to. Around 2022 or thereabouts, I think phase 3 starts to kick in. And that's the phase we're in now. This is where the Belcanto makes its debut, the 12, and most recently the Trident Lumiere. Now, you might think that the difference between phase 2 and phase 3 are a couple of watches that really hit the spot in terms of consumer popularity, but I don't think that's it. The thing that changed in phase 2 coincided with the 12 being massively popular, but I think the key is how the catalog transformed in a key way. The 12 itself isn't the interesting piece of the equation. The thing to take note of with the 12 was the release of the COSC certified titanium 12. That's the upgrade, if you will. A model that was a little bit more expensive than the regular model, with a few more bells and whistles. The Lumiere is also an upgrade model. It's a higher spec, premium version of the regular Trident with a more premium dial, more expensive titanium case, and a fully COSC certified movement. The Belcanto, I think it was released as a showcase piece, and I firmly believe it caught them by a complete surprise how popular it would be. The key to phase 3 is how you have this very clear differentiation materializing in the catalog with entry models and higher spec models. A C60 Trident is to this day around those $1,000, but the talked about watch is the $2,500 titanium Lumiere C60 Trident. Same goes for the 12. The Moonglow might not be an upgrade because there's no entry, but it's very much not an entry-level product. The new C65 Super Compressor isn't an entry-level product either. Why are CW so popular right now? No, it's not because all of us YouTubers are paid by them and we're just shills for them. I've got more faith in people that watch my and other YouTube channels. You wouldn't be buying CW and allowing CW to grow as massively as they have if they didn't have good products. A lot of people independently looked at the Belcanto, the 12, and the Lumiere and thought, that's a good looking watch for a price that I find reasonable. It's not more complicated than that. As long as any brand does that, you're likely set up for success. That's one component, likely the most important one, but there's also price. Cheaper watches used to be junk. Go back before COVID, and watches that got broad attention were horrid brands like Daniel Wellington that were watches with bargain basement quartz movements and the simplest designs in terms of manufacturing complexity. Cheap watches online were the brands that sold you the story of cutting out the middleman and thereby saving your money. Now, Christopher Ward are not the only ones, but in the last 5 to 10 years, a new kind of affordable brand has made inroads. These brands are smaller brands that try to make real watches with mechanical movements and high-end details at affordable prices. It's Monta, it's Formex, it's Christopher Ward, and yes, it's also Chinese brands like San Martin, albeit the Chinese brands have done less in terms of original designs, but generally the playbook for all of these brands has been the same. You get yourself a decent but not overly expensive mechanical movement. It's a Sellita or a Soprod or a Miyota or a Seiko NH movement. Then you get yourself a supplier of OK dials, you get yourself a supplier of a decent case, and you create a core case design that is your signature case, your own bespoke oyster case, if you will. Finally, you get a really good bracelet with a quick release bracelet, on-the-fly adjustment, and solid end links. From there, you make sure everything is well polished because shiny means it looks premium, and you sell it in a pretty but not expensive case. You do all of this by being really good at managing your supply chain. You source the right components for your needs from the right vendors, and you assemble all of those parts as efficiently as possible. When you do all of that well, and you largely only sell online, you hope you can sell your watch at a lower price with a lower margin, but hopefully over time sell enough watches to turn a profit. I mentioned earlier that 2023 is the first time in a while that CW have made a noticeable profit. I said that part of that was because of investing in the future, building for growth, but I also said there was something else at play. When I did a video about CW about a year back, I saw the model CW had as one that would eventually be profitable. But at the time, I very much also thought that those upgrades like the Belcanto and the 12 in titanium would not be key to making profit. I thought there would be conversation pieces to get noticed, to get press, but the volume and the profit would be those entry models. The basic Dune, the basic Trident, and all the others. But I've changed my position. I think things have changed in some key ways in the industry that make it a very difficult proposition. Post-COVID, everything shot up in price. Some of that translated into exorbitant price increases for watches from JLC and others, but it did actually permanently raise the cost of manufacturing a watch. Costs got higher for everybody, including Rolex and Omega, but they were always going to be fine because of their sheer size and volume. But small brands like CW, I think, felt the heat far more. When you're already trying to be affordable, an increase in your production costs massively eats into any profit that you may have on those affordably priced watches. Secondly, this watch space is crowded. I like to name drop because it gives a point of reference. And this won't be any different in this video. Zelos, Baltic, Monta, Unimatic. So many brands are trying to convince people to part with $500, $1,000, $2,500 for a watch. A lot of them have a pretty good diver, just like Christopher Ward. A lot of them have a workhorse movement, just like Christopher Ward. A lot of them have a pretty good bracelet, just like Christopher Ward. So you want to be affordable. Costs went up, and honestly, your watch is pretty generic. And sure, you're good at managing your supply chain, but that too can be replicated by others. If you spend money on marketing, which you need to do, you cut into your potential profits. Overall, that's not a recipe for sustainable profit. There's too much competition, and everybody kind of looks the same in terms of quality. Into the mix, you add that Christopher Ward still professed to have this 3x logic, where the individual watch apparently will never be priced at more than 3 times the production cost. That kind of locks you in. With this strategy, you only have one way of making a profit, and that's volume. Volume gets you cost discounts, it gets you efficiencies, but that takes time, and in this space, it might not be enough. And this is where I think CW changed tack. Upgrades are king. Hopefully you'll agree with my argument that Rolex makes more per watch on a two-tone Submariner than a regular Submariner. So Christopher Ward, they openly say 3x. So 3 times the cost price is the sale price. Now let's just assume Rolex for a steel Submariner is 6x. Do you think the two-tone is just 6x? No. It's probably 10x or 15x. It's a lot more. And the gold is maybe 20x. They are putting in a higher multiplier as you go to two-tone and full gold. CW is still promising 3x only. Let's stick with that and assume that they are staying true to that. Just consider a watch like the C60 Trident. Sales price, $1225. The 3x logic dictates a cost price of around $400. That means a profit of $816. The C60 Trident Lumiere is $2,625. That means a cost of $875, still assuming CW's stated 3x pricing. What's the profit? Not $816, it's $1,750. That's more than double that of the regular C60. You sell one of those and you're making the same profit as 2 regular C60s. For Rolex, I think I can pretty confidently say with absolutely zero inside information into one of the world's most secretive watch companies that Rolex make a profit on every single watch. I think they could have a profitable business just selling Oyster Perpetuals. They don't need to sell a gold Submariner to turn a profit. The gold Submariner is a profit monster, but there's a lot of money in steel-based Rolex models. My guess, on the other hand, is Christopher Ward is betting on people buying everything other than the entry models. My thinking right now is that the entry models, to a large extent, are there to show that Christopher Ward are true to that affordability promise of the really good $1,000 watch, but they really want you to buy those upgrades. Actually, I might go as far as to assume that the core lineup is actually the upgrades and the base models are just the filler. The base C60 Trident, I think, functions in much the same way as the entry-level iPad with 128 gigabytes. Sure, it gets sold, but it's in the catalog, so you can say to people, we have a cheap iPad. But we all know that 80, maybe 90% of customers go for the 256 gigabyte model. If that's the case, I think CW are really onto something. I can see how they've built a model around convincing people that they're affordable with their $1,000 models, but consistently getting most customers to buy the $2,000 or $2,500 models. You've got all the advantages of seeming affordable, but ultimately making your money on your expensive core catalog. It's essentially the supersize model. You know you're never buying just the burger or just the standard meal. But the burger and the standard meal is on the menu anyway, despite the fact that you are more than likely to just default to the supersize. That seems like a smart play to me. What's next? Is Christopher Ward going for Tudor? I've read a couple of discussions about that online with the release of the Lumiere. The Lumiere has a lot in common with the Milagros 39. It's titanium, it's got a great movement with a COSC certification, it's got an upgraded dial. It's a statement titanium piece. But no, I don't see a scenario with Christopher Ward going for Tudor. Tudor's a very different beast. They are fully in-house. They have a marketing budget orders of magnitude larger than anything Christopher Ward can muster. Tudor is a premium brand now and in no way competes with Christopher Ward. I like CW watches, but Tudor watches are in terms of quality leagues ahead of CW, and their brand is far more compelling. CW, for all their strengths, still don't generate the level of emotion that Tudor does. Sure, there are CW fans out there that swear by them, but let's not kid ourselves. The power of the Tudor brand is not to be underestimated. Outside of our little nerdy enthusiast community, Christopher Ward is good, but they're not that. Phase 3, I think, isn't done yet. I see the following things in the crystal ball. Imagine a GMT with a true GMT movement. I'd pay a premium over the regular CW GMT for that. Imagine a CW12 with a GMT or a small seconds dial. Imagine a ceramic dune. Picture a more compelling mechanical chronograph and not the quartz model that they have now. Christopher Ward's catalog isn't complete right now. There are still those less compelling models like the chronograph. Other models still need that upgrade, and that's a good thing. Right now, CW is riding high. Call me a fanboy all you want. The 12 was a hit. The Belcanto was a fan favorite. The new Lumiere is exciting. Omega's most vaunted release this year is a plain black dial Acroterra. Audemars Piguet makes popular but repetitive Royal Oak releases. And Rolex put as much effort into creativity as the designers of the new version of the Porsche 911. CW is trying to wow consumers to generate excitement, and that's good for us. It's not going to be that way forever. Just like when your favorite sports team wins the World Cup, you start to dream about winning every World Cup forever, and you can't imagine someone beating the team you have right now. But the reality is that what goes up will go down eventually, and someone else will take that dominant position. But right now, the Springboks are the best. But I digress. CW are doing good things. Let's just enjoy it. What are your thoughts on CW? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe. Cheers.